Welcome to the On the Marc podcast, brought to you by Great Southern Bank. We'll be opening the doors to the lives of your favourite baggers, just like Great Southern Bank is here to help you open the door to your own home sooner. Okay, so we've got one of the greats of the Carlton Football Club today. He didn't play a game for the Blues, but he's had basically every role that he possibly could have here at Carlton and other clubs. He's a lifetime VFL, AFL member, lifetime in 2021 back with me, which was a big highlight for both of us. Had time at Footscray, Brisbane, Carlton to start off with, and then found his way back to the Blues back in 1994.
Yep.
So my study is okay so far to start. ShaneO Solomon, thanks for joining us on the Marc.
Thanks a lot, Murph. That's a pleasure to be with you.
We had one of your favourites last week on the episode, Bryce Gibbs.
Yeah.
I'll ask you about Gibbsy in time once we get a little bit further on in this podcast. But you started life here at the Carlton Football Club in the year 1979, a premiership year. Promotions manager. What did that involve, Prez?
Well, basically, I think at that stage there was really there was a general manager, was Keith McKenzie, and company secretary, and lady in the office, and me. And basically, you were the recruiter, you were team manager, you were sort of everything in those days. So it was a real good way to learn, and went to match committee and things like that. So premiership first year, I couldn't believe my luck. I felt a bit cheated coming in about around 2 or 3 when I started. So the season was well on its way, but amazing start to be involved in VFL.
Of course. So the first experience, obviously premiership year, offices in the old Heatley stand, was it?
Heatley stand. It was it was probably about 3 or 4 offices all together. You walk up the hallway, there was the president, George Harris, had an office. And then you went in the rooms and, I know you got to move on with the times, but it was great atmosphere in those rooms over, the time that I was here.
Obviously a big name at the football club, George Harris. What was he like to work underneath?
He was, I called him Mr. Harris.
Yes.
I was too frightened to call him George. I can remember when we won the flag in 79, I'm not really a drinker, as you know, Mark.
Yep, I do know that. I'll ask you about that later on.
And I thought, might as well have a couple of drinks. This might never happen again. And about 2 o'clock that night after the grand final, Trevor Keogh, Barry Armstrong, that sort of crew were leaving, and I said, no, come on, it's too early to go. We'll go down to George's.
Ringleader.
Yeah, we'll go down to George's office, and I had a key, and George had a bar there. And anyway, I think we'll drink Bacardi and orange juice and all that.
Is that where the love of Bacardi started, was it?
That's where the love of Bacardi came. And anyway, the next morning I woke up and thought, what have I done? I'm probably going to get the sack. So I can remember going in Monday and went into George's office, and I said, look, I apologise if the place was a mess and nothing in the fridge. It was totally my fault. And he said, Shane, if you can't enjoy a premiership, there's something wrong. So I was very relieved after that.
Well, you must have done something well, because he would have been impressed by that. You were promoted to the assistant to the general manager the following year, and then a role which you held in the back-to-back years of 81, 82. You must have been thinking, how easy is VFL football here? We've won 3 flags in 4 years.
I know it was sort of hard to sort of believe, but it was sort of just expected at Carlton in those times. Like, I remember in Alex's first year, if we lost a game, he'd just say to the boys, well, it looks like we're training until 11 o'clock Tuesday night. So they'd say, come on, let's get going here. So, they had an amazing sort of attitude and hunger, to win, but they certainly had a lot of fun off the ground as well. But it was an amazing sort of time to be around, and it was one of those things. It was sort of because the club was so good and we're on tally in Western Australia, South Australia, it was a lot easier to recruit players in those times.
So do you have a role in trying to recruit some of those players? I know there's been a lot of players from the West. I know we've got a great following over there in WA,
Yeah.
some of those initial players that you're involved with getting across to the football club?
Yeah, well, involved with Kenny Hunter and Buzz and those sort of guys. And, Wes Loss was chairman of selectors at the time, and he was the real power broker at the time. So, you'd bring players over and meet with Wes, and, we had some, good luck in getting those sort of players, and, Phil Malin from Adelaide at the time as well. So I think Phil, for example, played in a practice match here, played St Kilda the week before, played with us, and after the game here, he signed that night. So, Wes, I don't know what you did, but he was happy to sign. But, I know my wife, and that helped Phil's wife at the time, sort of looked after her during the day. So I think the Blues did more of a family situation than perhaps the Saints did the week before.
So do you have Phil live with you as well? You and
Phil, Phil lived with us for a couple of weeks. We've had a lot of players over the journey.
So he was the first that lived with you, was he?
He probably, I think he might have been the first to stay with us. And for probably 27 years after that, we had players live with us at different stages.
We'll ask you a few of my ex-teammates that live with you through various stages of their football life. But then you left here at Carlton and got the main role at Footscray.
Yep.
And were there for 4 years before heading to Brisbane. Can you take us back through that little period, leaving the Blues and going to Footscray, and then life up on the Queensland?
Well, as you just said, 4 years, 3 flags. You sort of wonder if it's really, if it's you or the Carlton Footy Club. I really wanted to sort of challenge myself. So, as I said, when you knocked on the door and you're from Carlton, basically everyone was happy to sign. So Tony Capes, who was the president of Footscray at the time, and I was involved in the Teal Cup also in my time at Carlton, and with Alan Swab and those sort of people. And Tony was the doctor of the Teal Cup, and he chased me to go to Footscray. And anyway, I finally said yes. And I'll be honest, I was there a week, and I don't mind admitting I end up in tears and think, what the hell have I done? Because, just the comparison going from a premiership club to the bottom club. But anyway, just sort of, grabbed myself and said, come on, you want the challenge. So we just determined to get good people to come and work there, and tried to get the best coach we could at the time as well.
So you end up getting Mick Moldhouse before then going to Brisbane? Of recruiting Mick, getting Mick in?
Before I started working at Carlton, I trained at Richmond for a couple of years and wasn't good enough to make it. But, people like Mick and Neil Baum really stood out when we were there. For the blokes that didn't make it, they treated everyone really well, and just sat in the back of my mind. And then when I went to Footscray, Ian Hampshire was the coach at the time. And, after being with David Parkin, it was, just a huge gap in how the footy club should be run. And unfortunately, being inexperienced, tried to get Bluey out of 83, and it, didn't sort of, as I say, lacked a bit of experience how to go about it, and trying to get Mick in, but it didn't work. So then the year went, and at the end of the year, Bluey decided to retire, and then we spoke to Mick, and the rest is sort of history. So
then you had a few coaches as well up in Queensland at the Lions.
Yeah.
Do you have much to do with the Robert Wall as well, who's down here previously at Carlton before, then obviously working with him at Brisbane?
Not really. You sort of come across Rob a few times, but I hadn't sort of really had much to do with him until we got him up to the Bears, and it was pretty hairy sort of time up there with Christopher Skase and Paul Cronin, and I think people forget in the first 3 years we won 6, 7 and 8 games, and then I think the fourth year or something we lost 5 games in a row, so we had to sack 5 players.
Yeah, right.
So I thought, if we keep going at this rate, we won't have any players, Murph.
Yeah.
So, but then Robert come and sort of, all the coaches that we had, like Peter Knights and Norm Dare, and that they all contributed so much. Knights, he doesn't get us enough credit for what he had to put up with. We're trained in portables and different grounds all around Queensland, and we got players that no one wanted. But, some of them were terrific, like Phil Walsh, the late Philip Walsh, won our best and fairest the first year. Fantastic player for us. Jeff Rains and Roger Merritt and all those sort of. So we had some good players, and then Robert come and kept things moving along. So,
how'd you find the challenge of setting up basically a whole new football club?
Oh, look, it was hard work, but when I look back, it was an amazing, experience to sort of put a team together, which, not too many people get the opportunity to do. But as I said, a lot of Carlton gave us 3 players, and 2 of them had retired and gone overseas. So good old Colo. Yeah. He was
a good number.
But it was, and we probably had to pay players a little bit more than what we should have, but to get them up there and things like that, you had to do it because it was at first up. But it was a great thrill. I think, in January 87, it was something like 50 people jumped on a plane and we all landed in Brisbane together, and we stayed at the Park Royal Hotel in Brisbane. And as people got a house, we'd have a house party on the Friday night.
It's a good time to start. So, build some culture, Prez.
Yeah, the boys were, it was a great group of people, that went up there at the start.
And then it was at end of 94 that you ended up coming back to Carlton. What was your role when you first got back to Carlton? You obviously been starved of a bit of success and thought, I need to get back to winning some premierships.
Well, to be honest, I got the flick from Brisbane.
So you shouldn't have to tell us that.
No. As Kevin Sheedy always said to me, the longer you're going to get the flick somewhere. Yeah. So I was just lucky enough to come back to the Blues when when the late Alan Swab died, and Colo went up to become the general manager of the AFL footy, and Goffey moved up, and Jeff Walsh moved up the rung, and so I was lucky enough to get back here and be a part of the recruiting. So, which is really the thing you love the most, and you get the most enjoyment out of.
So, I was going to ask you that question. What role was your most favourite, and what did you get most enjoyment? What was more fulfilling, being involved as a general manager, or was it recruiting and seeing the next stars of the game coming through and having a role to play in their development?
I suppose I'm not going to answer real well because I've probably got 2. When I was at Footscray in 85, we made the finals, and 10 points from a grand final. To see the club for when I went there to that year, and the enjoyment and everything that gave everyone was really satisfying. But probably the most thing that I love is the recruiting, and seeing all you guys careers blossom and go through. So and just being involved, and you get to meet so many great people, and not just the player but the families and all that sort of thing. So recruiting's probably been the most thing I've loved the most.
And who were your first picks at Carlton when you first get down here? Can you remember who your first few picks that you drafted into the footy club?
Probably, one of the, as my wife says, I've lived off him for all my life, in Sticks Kernahan.
That's not a bad one.
Yeah, he was probably, one of the first, but, some, just great country players like Des English, and I can remember he played in the 81, 82 flags, and he, Bendigo boy, and wouldn't come down until he played a senior game. So once he got his first senior game, I said, mate, the removalist is coming tomorrow. Yeah. So, so many of those sort of players, and, being involved with Kenny Hunter and Peter Bazzusto and those sort of players coming to club in the early days was pretty special.
Could you tell, I want to ask you about Sticks because he's one of my favourites. Yeah. Could you see in a young Sticks Kernahan the superstar that he was going to be, or did he just develop before your eyes here at the footy club? What were a couple of things that really stood out to you about Stephen Kernahan?
I've told this story many times, so people might get sick of it, but the great Wes Loss said to me, "You got to find us a Royce Hart." And so I went and I went to the I think it was the under-16 carnival in Western Australia. And I come back and said, I found Royce Hart. And he said, no, you couldn't. I said, I'm telling you, we found Royce Hart. And I said, his name's Stephen Kernan, but the biggest problem is his dad's the GM of Adelaide or Glenelg, and you know how they hate Victorians.
Yeah.
So he just stood out, you know, right from day one. And, you know, to me, right through his career, right to now, he's still that same fantastic young fella that he was back then. And, you know, I don't have to tell you, you know, what he's like as a footy person and how much he cares about the club. But, yeah, he's marking, just the way he led all the time, the team. So, yeah, he was just a standout from that day. And what he achieved didn't surprise me. And then, you know, when Wolsey made him captain his second year, which, you know, was just an amazing choice.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing choice, isn't it, to name your skipper after 1 year at the football club to name him skipper. I was talking to Bryce Gibbs last week, and he was talking about being named in the leadership group in his first year before he played a game, which we found quite funny.
Yeah.
But how did he manage to pry him out of Glenelg? Obviously, you talked about his old man being the GM there. How did you get him over the line?
Well, it was interesting because you know, everyone wanted him at the time, and our biggest opponents were Essendon with Sheeds and Melbourne, and in those days, particularly South Australians and Western Australians, they'd come over. You might pay for them to come over, and they'll end up talking to so many clubs.
Yeah,
and you're paying the bills. So Harry said to me, "Excuse me, that look, we'll come over and we'll pay our own way." And whoever gets Stephen's signature can reimburse us. So it couldn't be much fairer than that. And just before that, though, there was no way Stephen was going to leave until they won a flag at Glenelg, which he did. So that sort of helped a bit as well. But so when he come over for the weekend, you know, as I said, the hardest opponents were probably Sheeds at the time because Melbourne didn't send Barassi to see him, which was a surprise. You know, you've got to throw all the big guns. But I had Bruce Dool ringing him up before he came, and would have been amazing.
Was it good effort getting Bruce Dool to give him a call?
Harry used to say to me that, it's Bruce here, Stephen. Oh, how are you, Bruce? I'm good, thank you. That was very short conversation, but we just sort of really threw everything that the club had at him, and just as we've said, just fantastic. And you know, personally, I think he's probably, you know, one of our greatest players, you know, to ever pull on the Guernsey. And you know, I know what you think of him as well, the respect you got for him. Yeah, certainly,
I certainly do, and the love and the hate relationship for Essendon. Does that stem back to maybe choosing between Carlton and Essendon back then, or was that obviously on the back of probably quite a few big heated games against the old foe? Because I still remember Sticks when he was president. He used to come down obviously before every game, but there was always something bigger when it was Carlton v Essendon.
He fired up, didn't he?
He certainly fired up. So it didn't matter what the coach at the time, whether it was Rats or whether it was Mick at the time. But when we played Essendon, I remember Sticks used to sort of position himself towards the race. And give us another little bake on the way out about making sure that we got over the line against the Bombers. Yeah,
I think it was a whole combination. You know, perhaps it's, you know, Cheese might have said something to him when he didn't sign with Essendon, but he lives in Essendon area and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was, I mean, a lot of people talk about our, you know, rival with Collingwood, but I think Essendon's been the real one that everyone gets fired up about, and from what I gather, I think they do as well. So, but love that voice, you know, when you boys are ready to go out, and he'd have that booming voice, and you know, can't repeat exactly what he said.
If saving for a deposit is taking forever, stop saving harder and start saving clever with Great Southern Bank. Their clever tools such as the Boost and the Vault help you save for your deposit faster. Visit greatsouthernbank.com.au/clever to learn more. Great Southern Bank, happily clever after. So you were recruiting manager for 10 years, was it? Because I think Walks your last.
Walks was the last.
Was the last draft, and Andrew Walker. I know you had a few people stay at your house over the journey. You had Andrew Walker, who was a young 17-year-old from Echuca, who was playing at or going to school at Caulfield Grammar, and then living with you and Carol and the kids. How'd you find Walks when he first got down the football club? Obviously, hugely talented.
Yep.
But also having him living underneath your roof.
Oh gosh, where do you start and finish with Walks?
We've got plenty of time, Chris.
I know, and I don't think he's changed from what I hear with Lukey Livingston and that. I mean, just the great young fellow. But yeah, he come and lived with us, and I remember going to school at Caulfield Grammar, and Tom, my son, was going at the same time in year 7, and so that was a
good influence for Tom. Wouldn't
great. I can remember sometimes. I don't think Andrew took too many things, books or pens to school, but I wouldn't say he went all the time, though he was supposed to.
Yeah.
But he was an interesting fellow. He sometimes you'd tell him to do something and you'd get home and it hadn't been done or whatever, but he certainly had a really good career, and now looks like his young kids are going to be pretty good players too. Yeah. So hopefully with some of our past players like yours, and the kids will come up and end up playing for the Blues. But he's living with Walks was an experience on its own.
No doubt. And have you seen a better debut game out here from Andrew Walker? I know he took a hanger, which he showed he can do quite often in his career. But have you seen a guy come in and play a debut game quite like his?
No, it was a pretty special day. I can remember it was quite an emotional time for him too, because his grandfather had passed away and had the funeral on the Friday. And I can remember, when everyone plays their first game, you always sort of get extra tickets. But we, as people may remember, at Carlton here, the old little Hawthorn super box sort of area between the Pratt stand and the Heatley stand. It's like a super box. And I can remember, probably ushering about 40 people through the door, which shouldn't have been people coming through to come and watch Andrew play his first game. And, to play like he did was pretty special. I'm sure, he certainly had an extra inspiration that day with family. But, it was pretty special. And when you look back to his credit, he had a pretty bad knee before he got drafted, and I can remember going with Kevin Sheen to see Julian Feller down at Olympic Park, and he had to, because that's who we wanted to pick, but just wanted to make sure the knee was okay. And Julian said, "Look, I reckon you'll get 10 to 12 years out of him," and he was spot on, really.
Yeah.
Walks got through, but he was a tough bugger as well. I can remember sometimes Dennis Pagan, he might have felt a bit crook, and can you just tell Andrew, really push hard? Well, you really didn't have to tell him too much. He certainly pushed through a lot of different adversities.
Oh, he certainly did. He was one of the most professional players I've played with over the journey. And interesting to hear you talk about his knee. I had no idea that was an issue before the draft, because the back end of his career, I was obviously playing with him, but had a sore knee myself, and we were going out and getting our knee drained twice a week sometimes out there, and just seeing him trying to get through that period was pretty difficult. So he's certainly one of the hardest working players, but also most diligent and real competitor, wasn't he?
I don't think people realise what you guys go through, with injuries, getting your knees drained and all that. Everyone's quick to criticise, but, what you have to put your body through, and later on, you're going to be pretty sore later on in life.
No, he had a great career. Bloke, I'm surprised you actually let someone else stay at your house after having Walks stay with you for 12 months. But Bryce Gibbs stayed with you for 2 years. You couldn't quite get him out of the house. He told me that you used to make him sandwiches before coming to training here, which one surprised me that Carol wasn't making the sandwiches, but it was you that were making the sandwiches, because I used to actually, and quite a few of our teammates, give him a bit of stick. They used to open the lunchbox and his sandwich was made from yourself.
No, well, I'm not speaking behind my wife's back, but she's not the greatest cook in the world. And but I used to make the kids' sandwiches every day. I think Tom had every day of his school life Vegemite sandwiches that I made, and Bryce was easy to make them. And I know he used to cop a bit of flack from you boys that I'd made the sandwiches for him, but. Bryce, we had, as I said earlier, a lot of players stay with us over the years, but Bryce was our longest serving two years, and I think it was mainly because he didn't want to cook, he didn't want to wash, everything was sort of done for him.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is, like, I think Carol only charged him $50 a week or something.
No wonder he stayed for 2 years.
I know. Like I said to her, like, he's earning about 20 times more than I am, and he paid his $50. I said, crikey, he's one of the most highest paid number one draft picks at the time.
He's not bad. A question I like to ask our guests on the show is what they spent their first footy paycheck on. I'll ask you about Michael Voss's first contract, because apparently you had something to do with that, about how to structure that. And he's told everyone that you're quite tough to get one through with. But anyway, you can digress a little bit more on what Voss is talking about there. Well,
he was one of the local Queensland boys. We were allowed to put 3 Queenslanders on at the time. And, I thought, he's got to earn the right. And I can't exactly remember exact figures, but when you look back on it, it was I think we got away with one, to be honest. It was pretty cheap and early contract, but I'm sure at the end of the day he's ended up with.
He's done all right.
He's done all right. He's done all right. I always with Wolsey about Michael coming to training. I remember in the early days. He'd come to training and we had match sim this particular night, and ball got kicked along in the air down the flank, and Vossie's running back with the fly of the ball towards the pack and took this mark, and Robert and I looked at each other and said, well, I think he might be all right, this bloke. So, we certainly didn't pay him too much, that's for sure.
Talking about some of, you talk about Michael Voss there, how good a young player you thought he was going to be from your early indications. Who are some of your favourite players or best players you've seen over the journey? I know you've talked about Sticks, but do you have much to do with Bruce Dool? Because my old man thinks that Bruce Dool is probably the greatest Carlton player he's seen play. But some of your favourites over the journey involved with the footy club, who you love watching?
When I first come to Carlton, after a while, if we had some kids from, Bendigo was our zone, and if you brought some kids down to watch training or going to play, I used to say, Bruce was certainly, magnificent, but if you were a centre forward or a key forward, I used to get him to make sure he watched the way Mark McClure played. Yep. I mean, Sellers probably wasn't the most gifted player in lots of ways, but he was just determination and competitive, and just worked so hard, like Wayne Johnson and those sort of guys, Ashy and Marku. You couldn't get a better bloke to sort of contest the ball, and they'd be all under his feet or whatever. But it was those sort of days. Bruce Dool and Southby's and Curly Austin, Val Perry. Gosh, it was amazing. I can remember. In those days I was playing in the VFA myself, and when Parko was coach, we'd always play match practice every Tuesday, and he'd say, we need you to run out and fill in a spot. And one night I played full forward, and Bruce hit me 5 times and kicked 5 goals, and Parko put my name up on the board to get selected. Wes Loss was furious. But I said to Bruce, if I could have that every Sunday, I'd kick 100 in the VFA. But, he was Bruce was one of these players too. If he had an injury on Sunday morning, he'd come in real early, get the ultrasound on and, ultrasound the ankle or whatever, and then be stripped ready to train as though nothing happened. But there's too many sort of, too many. And, even, people like, watching you, I can remember watching you play in the schoolboys, one of those, what was it?
White Friars College?
Yeah, but at the MCG.
The MCC Shield.
Shield, whatever it was. You see, and now you're finished, and hopefully, another Murphy coming along the way.
Fourth
down
generation,
the track.
possibly, hopefully goes to the club his father played for.
Exactly.
The first of the
not like what you did.
No. So you're... obviously had 79, 81, 82 and 95 being the premiership years. What team was the best? I know it's probably hard to try and separate them, but in your mind, which premiership side at Carlton was your, not your favourite, but who you thought was the best premiership side in that period?
81, 82, in hindsight, I reckon we should have won 4 in a row. Val Perovic come in 80. and got injured and played in one of the finals, and just his, we just were a bit short down back in that particular game, but they were pretty special team, with the players that were playing, and I know it's big statement to say, but most of those boys would get a game anytime, even now, just the way they played. It's a hard one to sort of, but I think 81, 82 were pretty special teams. But then really Carlton probably, missed one in 94. They played Geelong in a final, and Geelong had 3 or 4 of their guns out, and everyone expected us to win, and we didn't. But then, they certainly made up for it in 95.
And which I'd like to ask our guests as well about the current team. Like, which former player would you love to inject into the current team to take this current crop to the next level? Who are we crying out for, Prez? Some pretty handy ones over the journey.
Yeah, gee whiz. I mean, I know we've got 2 pretty good forwards at the moment, but the big sticks would be pretty handy. Yeah. Probably Justin Madden would be, over the journey, like having someone like him, and pretty underrated, Justin. In those days he'd virtually ruck the whole day, and was an amazing shot for goal for a big fella. So he'd be one that I reckon, if we could inject into the team now to make a big difference.
Was he just athletically unbelievably gifted? Like, because I remember the only couple of clips I've seen of him is that running bounce goal out at Waverley. And I suppose a lot of people, when they think of Harry Madden, they think of that, don't they?
They do.
That run.
They do.
But he was obviously a real competitor.
Yeah, great competitor. Yeah. He wasn't as like Simon was just amazing. Simon, could ruck, he could play forward, he could do most things, where Juzzo was really the main ruckman. You really couldn't put him forward and all that. But like you just said, he could do some of these amazing things. And I think one of the great things about Justin was, he wasn't the greatest trainer either, to be honest. And as he said, you never run a time around the tan that you can't beat. And he lived to that, I tell you. Yeah.
I reckon I heard that from you too. So I probably tried to filter that into my program over the years. What's your current role now at the football club? I know you're involved with the past players predominantly, but
look, I've got to be honest, a great gig now, looking after all the past players and life members, and I jump in and help anywhere the footy club needs at different stages. But it's a real a great thing to be involved with all the past players. I suppose lucky I know so many of them over 40 odd years. You sort of know most people, but one of the things that the club's really doing well is that a lot of guys fall on some hardships, and I'm talking about illnesses and things like that, and to be able to sort of help them sort of get some help. The AFLPA do an amazing job, and we'll pick up where they don't.
Yeah, that's a bit of a gap.
Just which I mean, they can't do everything, the AFLPA. But, like just for example, one of our players is struggling with his sight and can't work and things like that. So, we're supporting him, and, just to, be able to, give them some relief in different ways. But also we have an amazing function every year where we get 1,000 odd people turn up, and we auction things off, and Carlton supporters are amazing because they know the money's going towards the past players. So it's certainly been a winner, and I think David Rees-Jones and Jeff Southby and those guys started the spirit of Carlton up years ago when we were struggling, and they've sort of set a great scene. But and we've been sort of lately sort of trying to get different decades together and come to a game, and we sort of had one recently which was great, and guys played 1 or 2 games. One guy come from Tassie and one come from Western Australia, and so they really like to get together, and hopefully we start getting a lot of you guys together as well.
We had a life members luncheon that was organised at the Q Golf Club and sat on the table with Fev. I hadn't seen Fev for quite a while, but it's great to see guys who it's hard when you're trying to get everyone back, especially when guys haven't won premierships to try and come back. But I think that having you there is certainly the glue that binds everyone together. You're certainly the heart and soul of the Carlton Footy Club, Perez. So I'd like to say thanks on behalf of all the past players. Thanks for your time today on the Marc podcast. Great Southern Bank's obviously our co-major partner, so they put this all on for us. So, mate, thanks for your efforts over the journey. You've been an absolute champion of the footy club off the field and no doubt made everyone's lives easier as a result. So
that,
thanks
Murph.
for your time, Press.
No, thanks, Murph. It's been a pleasure watching you play your whole career as well, and keep up the good work what you're doing at the moment.
Cheers, mate.